Crime Stories with Nancy Grace.
Think about it. What if your teen boy simply disappeared, just seemingly vanished off the face of the earth, and then you find his boots? What does it mean, and why are we not getting any support from law enforcement? You know, when I call 911, I expect somebody to answer and do something about it. That's why we pay taxes, right? We pin our hopes on law enforcement. And listen to me, law enforcement in these two jurisdictions, we need your help, not your resistance. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Fox Nation and Sirius XM 111. I'm talking about teen boy Dylan Rounds. Take a listen to our friends at Fox 13.
This land in Lucin, Utah might not look like much, but to 19-year-old Dylan Rounds, it was everything.
This is the pond he dug out. He talked to me about planting trees around it and stocking fish in it, and it was just one of his little dreams.
Now it's been almost a week and a half since Dylan last returned to his camper. His dad, Justin, says his son was last seen Memorial Day weekend at the Saddle Sore Saloon, a bar 30 miles west in Montello, Nevada.
I'm convinced that it's foul play. Every vehicle he has, a retractor, everything is accounted for and in place.
One of the last conversations Dylan had with his dad was about his excitement for the crop he had just planted.
He wanted to see it grow. He wasn't going to leave. There was nothing that was going to take him away from here.
You know, think of the thing you love the most in the world. I know what it is. It's my children, John, David, and Lucy. Nothing within my power could separate me from them. Now, I grew up in farmland, and a farmer loves his or her land. It's a love I can't even describe. And this teen boy, Dylan Rounds, loved his land, his hopes, his dreams, his plans, his futures, all wrapped up in that land. So why would he leave it? He wouldn't. With me, an all-star panel to make sense of what we know right now about the disappearance of this teen boy, Dylan Rounds. But before I introduce them, I want to go to a very special guest joining us. This is Dylan's mother, Candice Cooley. Miss Cooley, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Miss Cooley, before I get into the entire story about what you've been through and what your family's discovered so far and the search you did just about 48 hours ago, I want you to tell me about the moment you realized Dylan is missing.
So it was Memorial Day, Monday, May 30th. Mm-hmm. And Dylan's friend JD called me around 11 o'clock. I was working in my office and asked if I had heard from Dylan. And I said no. And he said, well, Karen called and said they haven't heard from him from Saturday. Now, it is not typical for Dylan to go 2 or 3 days without talking to him, but he always talks to either myself, his father Justin, or his grandparents. So when we put together that he had not talked to any of us, that's when I instantly knew. Because he's always in contact with one of the three, and my husband and I packed up and headed down because I knew. And especially where he had been planting, he was just trying to finish up before the rain because there was rain in Lucin that weekend to make sure his crop was in. And I knew because he should have called us all and been like, I finished. It's done. I got it in, and the rain's going to get on it. This is great. And nobody had heard anything since Saturday morning, May 28th at 6:51 a.m.
Okay. How are you pinpointing that time, Saturday morning at 6:51?
Phone records.
Phone records.
Yep.
Okay. And what does that phone record reveal?
So he talked to his grandmother, actually, and she called him, and he said, I can't talk. I got to get my seed truck, my grain truck. He has a 10-wheeler full of his triticale seed. I got to get it in the shed. It's raining because, the rain will ruin the seed. He had a tarp on it, but it wasn't the best tarp. There was holes, so he was just trying to protect his seed and take it to the shop, the little shed that's 5 miles away, to protect it. And then he said, I'll call you back. And nobody's heard from him since.
And that was 6:51 a.m. on May 28th.
Correct.
And May 28th was what day of the week?
Saturday.
So he was up working on Saturday morning before 7 a.m.
Correct. Always. Got to get up early and get going.
A lot of people can't connect with farmers' hours. We grew up on farmers' hours, so I'm up every day at least at 5. But most people are on, they revolve it around going to school and work.
Correct.
But it's not typical. It is typical for him to be up very early in the morning. So speaking to his grandmother at 6:51 a.m. would have been normal.
Correct. And the only time, he'd sleep in would be if he was up baling hay all night. He doesn't go to bed till 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, so he'll sleep till 8.
That's a pretty big endeavor for a 19-year-old boy to be running his own farm. How did that happen?
So his grandfather and him partnered on this farm, where the family farm is with his father's up in eastern Idaho, the Idaho Falls area, and ground is just too expensive. So Dylan's always done custom work since he was 16, working for farmers. He got a tractor, he got a baler, he'd go do custom work, and he's been saving. And so him and his grandfather partnered on this farm so that he could start doing his own. The last couple years, he hauls beets in a full semi. In Idaho, you don't have to have a CDL. It'd be 21. He's done that for 2 years. So he's been constantly saving money, so that he can work towards putting his crop in.
What is custom work?
So that's baling somebody else's hay, hauling somebody else's product, swathing somebody else's hay, also just doing the same exact work, but doing it with your equipment, but it's somebody else's crop.
Gotcha. But now he's doing his own thing on that land he and his grandfather partnered on, right?
He still does both. So he spent half of the spring helping the Wine Cup gamble, tear out some ground. He drilled all of their grain to make money to be able to purchase the seed and do everything on his own farm. So he still does both. I mean, the kid works all the time. The only time he gets a little bit of free time is winter when you can't farm.
To Dr. Jory Crosden joining me, psychologist, faculty, St. Leo University, and author of Operation SOS. Dr. Jory, thank you for being with me. I'm listening to Candice Cooley. This is Dylan's mom, and I'm learning something about him. And this is very important to the investigation. And I'll ask Deputy Chief Elwood and Justin Borman to jump in on this. But if you trust somebody to come on your farm and harvest your crop and tear up your ground, aerate, tear up your ground, prepare your ground, bring in the crop, that is a very trustworthy, reliable person. Somebody that's up at 4 and 5 in the morning, works till 4 a.m. bringing in a crop. That tells me this is not like a lot of people that go missing. They're out on the street. They're doing drugs. They're in crack houses. They're at a bar till 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't know who they're coming in contact with. You see what I mean? This is not a high-risk life. It's a hard-working life. Somebody trustworthy that people want on their farm. I mean, you got to really trust somebody to have them on your farm, possibly with your equipment and your land and your crop. That's your future. That's your money for the whole next year is that crop. And people would bring this 19-year-old boy in to do a man's work. That's very reliable.
Let me tell you.
What? Tell me, Candice.
He started, so when Dylan was 13, 14, 15, he was so frustrated because no farmer could hire him because of workman's comp issues in Idaho. So when he turned 16, he was so happy. We have a huge potato farmer here named Albert Lockwood, and they hired Dylan at 16 to come drive a crossover. So you crossover, digs a whole bunch of rows of potatoes, puts them into one single row so that the main harvester can come over. You don't have to do so much work. It just cuts down some of the work. That's the pictures of him on the tractor I put on Facebook yesterday. 16 years old, and you have Albert's an older gentleman, late 70s, I'm not exactly sure. You have him who's done potatoes his whole life saying, this is one of the best operators I've ever had. This kid has it. That was at 16.
I'm Joseph Scott Morgan. I was the youngest medical legal death investigator in the country. I started my career on the mean streets of New Orleans and finished up as a senior investigator with the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office in Atlanta. The first time I ever made a death notification, I knew after that moment that I was going to try to be as compassionate as I possibly could. When families are rocked by death, the only thing they really want are answers. They ask how, where, sometimes why. They have no understanding. And for me, I would have to give voice to those things, to describe them, to make them make sense, if you will. When all is said and done, I was their advocate. I was the voice of the dead. I speak for those that can no longer speak for themselves. Listen to Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
My father had a secret, a family secret. Nobody talked about it. Nobody knew the answers. Nobody knew why my great-uncle was murdered in 1935 and why the case was never solved. Nobody could explain why the file sat untouched on a police department shelf for decades.
It can be one of two things: total incompetence, or there can be an element of corruption. There were things that were just best left buried.
I'm Karen Smith. I'm a retired detective. My dad held on to the family secret about Uncle Emery's murder for 50 years before he finally revealed what he knew, that my grandfather had been held as a suspect. Who killed my great-uncle? Join me for Season 2 of Shattered Souls and follow my journey to find out. This time, it's personal. Listen to Shattered Souls on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Some people are just born to do a certain thing. And this is what Dylan was born to do. It's in his blood, and he's really good at it. So, Dr. Jory, that's telling me a lot about where is Dylan. It's not that he's out in some bar getting beaten up in a parking lot or overdosing in drugs on drugs in an alley. That's not what has happened.
No, not at all. You know, I'm a behaviorist, and we always say if you want to predict future behavior, you have to know past behavior. And look at his last 3 years. I mean, he is a very diligent, dedicated worker. He's very organized. Mm-hmm. He's got a schedule. He sticks to it. Even his free time, he's gone to visit friends, and he's back to be able to work that shift in the morning. So, for him all of a sudden to be removed from that schedule, there had to be an outside force to remove him.
You're hearing the voice of Dr. Jory Crossan and Dylan's mother, Candice Cooley. Now, take a listen to Emily Tenser.
The Box Elder County Sheriff's Department and Weber County Fire and Rescue searched the area last week, along with helicopters, a plane, and search parties on foot, ATVs, and horses.
They called off the search, Box Elder, because they were 95% sure there's no sign of Dylan out in the 3 by 5 mile area.
His boots were found 5 miles west of his camper.
I'll never forget the look on Candace's face. And I can only imagine what I looked like when we saw those boots.
Each day is agony for his family, who live all the way up in Idaho. They're offering a $20,000 reward to bring Dylan home.
I just came back today just to kind of poke around, because I can't hardly leave here. That $20,000 is burning a hole in my pocket. I want to spend it today.
If you know anything about Dylan's disappearance, his family is begging you to call police. He's 5'10", weighs around 160 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes.
We got to find this boy. This is such a good boy. You don't believe me? Take a listen to Dave Mack, Crime Online.
Dylan Rounds has been a farmer since he was a little boy. From the time he could walk, he would try to keep up with his dad and grandpa as they worked outside. Dylan could drive a tractor by himself before most kids his age could ride a bike. When he was 10 years old, Dylan was growing pumpkin patches and sweet corn to sell. Citizens of the Rigby community knew every summer there would be Dillon sweet corn for sale under the county line overpass. Dillon attended Rigby High School and began farming grain a few years ago in the desert town of Lucin, Utah, near the Utah-Nevada border.
And you know, a lot of people Dillon's age will get excited about the game that Friday night or something happening in their social.
Yeah, and Dillon,
go ahead.
He never did any of that. He wasn't the football game kid. He didn't socialize in any of that. I mean, Dillon, it worked out perfect for Dillon because he was doing online school so he could farm, and then COVID hit, and he was the right age that he could drop out because he was working. So Dillon, I mean, and yes, his father and I didn't like the fact that he dropped out, but the fact of the matter is there was no stopping the kid. There was no stopping him. There was nothing we could do to stop him from going to farm. That's all he wanted to do. He also, you take a kid who doesn't even know how to play video games in his generation, and that sums it all up.
Wow, doesn't know how to play video games. That really does sum it up. What would make Dillon Rounds happy, this teen boy? Take a listen to Dave Mack, crimeonline.com.
Dillon lives by himself in a camper trailer on a remote piece of land in Lucin. Family members last heard from him when he called his grandmother the morning of Saturday, May 28th. Dillon had been busy getting his crops in and was really excited about recent rain, but a little down because the rain prevented him from getting all of the planting done. With the rain putting a damper on his farming activity, Dillon drove 30 miles to the town of Montello, Nevada, where he was seen on Memorial Day weekend. When family members realized Dillon had not been in contact since he spoke to his grandmother, they began trying to get in touch with him. Failing that, the family went to the farm and immediately called law enforcement for help.
Joining me right now, special guest Nate Eaton, our friend and colleague and news director of EastIdahoNews.com. You can find him on Twitter at Nate News Now. Nate, start at the beginning. Don't leave anything out.
Well, as Candice said, this all started when Dillon spoke with his grandmother that Saturday morning. He said, "I gotta get off the phone so that I can get this seed in." And then by Monday morning, when the family had not heard anything from him, they drove to the farm. What's interesting is when I spoke with Candice the other day, Nancy, Dillon's pickup truck was still there, but it appeared as if it had been pressure washed. It was clean, but it had been raining and it was muddy in that area. So somehow that truck got clean and was left there right outside of Dillon's camper where he was sleeping.
I don't like that
and there was no
all.
track.
And Candice Cooley, I hear you jumping in. Guys, this is Dillon's mother, and we are begging you for help finding Dillon. She's saying that the truck looked pressure washed, and I just heard Candice say that there were no tracks, and you think there would have been since it had been raining. But also tell me about the seat position. A lot of you may remember the Tara Grinstead case, this gorgeous teacher down in South Georgia who goes missing. Well, one thing that jumped out at me when we first learned Tara was missing, I was talking to her mother about it, was that her seat position was not where she would have had it. It was way back. Like when I'm 5'1", when I get in the car, my husband, who is 6'3", has been in the car, I have to push it up, right? Same thing here, right, Candice Cooley?
Yes, exact same thing. And I am 4'11", and Dillon is between 5'10" and 5'11", and he is all leg. His seat is all the way back. His steering wheel is up, and I could drive it. I could have comfortably drove it without moving the seat.
So that's not right at all.
No. And there were no tracks behind the pickup. It was muddy. When myself and my husband, Justin, his father, and our daughter, Brooklyn, pulled in, we left tracks on Monday still. If that pickup would have moved Saturday, there would have been tracks. Also, there's no footprint anywhere around that camper. And we were told the two gentlemen that worked with Dillon the one that helped him off and on, went out to the farm to find Dillon, walked around the pickup, walked around the camper, tried to, what's going on. Why didn't they leave footprints? We were leaving footprints on Monday.
Kirk Nurmi joining me, as you know him, renowned defense attorney, cast member, Radical Body Transformation Season 3, Amazon Prime, and author of Trapped with Miss Arias. You will remember him from defending Jodi Arias. Kirk Nurmi, I'm not holding that against you. Isn't it true, Kirk Nurmi, how one detail, like we're talking about his truck, you can learn so much from one piece of evidence, Kirk Nurmi?
Yeah, Nancy, when I think about this truck and the possible pressure washing and the movement of the seat, I wonder about how far it traveled. Did somebody have to buy gas in order to get this vehicle around? How many gas stations are there in town? Have they been looked at?
There's only one.
Have these workers been questioned? So there's not too many people in this circle. This is an industrious young man, passionate about his farming. He's not going to be distracted by too much, and we know that he had these two workers, and it appears from what my understanding is none of these people have been questioned. And I don't know if the gas station, if there's footage, what have you, but there should be some follow-up on those things, because those practical things that stem from the truck. Where was it pressure washed? Is there a car wash somewhere? Did somebody have equipment?
Hang on.
All these things need to be looked at.
No, there's no car wash. Montello is a town of 200 people in the middle of nowhere. Dylan has a pressure washer on his farm for his equipment.
Okay, so it could have been that. Guys, we're talking about the disappearance of a teen boy, Dylan Rounds. Now, the first thing I would be considering, and I'm going to go out to you, Justin Boardman, former Special Victims Unit detective, author of I Was Wrong, Investigators' Battle Cry for Change within the Special Victims Unit. Justin, I want to look at his circle. Who knows him? Who would he be with? And let me understand something. Nate Eaton, EastIdahoNews.com. Was he seen by anyone after he spoke to the grandmother at 6:51 a.m. Saturday, 5/28?
So police are saying that the cell phone from that phone call was pinging on his farm, but his last visible scene, the last time somebody physically saw him, was in Nevada, about 30 miles away.
Before or after the phone call?
That was before the phone call, wasn't it, Candice?
All right. So he was 30 miles away in Nevada before the phone call. So the last positive location is on his farm based on the ping to his grandma, 6:51 a.m. Saturday morning, 5/28. He's working. Okay, Justin, jump in.
Yes, ma'am. So, one of the things that I certainly would have focused on would have been some of the forensics, of course, swabbing the gear for the seat, right? That would certainly have been something that still could be done. Why Box Elder has not done a lot of that.
Let me tell you real quick. Box Elder let us take the pickup home 250 miles away. They allowed us to take the pickup home Sunday.
Without processing
June
it?
5th. They never touched the pickup, and I've got that message from the detective saying, "Can we take the pickup home? Do you need it? It's yours. Do whatever you want with it." They processed nothing, guys. Not the pickup, not the grain truck, not the camper, nothing. The boots didn't even make it to the lab. We found them Monday, May 30th. The boots did not even make it to the lab until Monday, May 6th, when I was told on Thursday, June 2nd, they were at the lab. I was lied to by the detective. Nothing got processed.
Some stuff could still be possibly found. Another thought that I had as far as search and rescue is concerned, I also was in a police department that searched that area on a case, a missing victim, Susan Powell. And we have GPS coordinates of every hole in the ground out there. We have detectives that were out there for 2.5 years, full time, mapping that area. And so they would have, and since that's an open case now, you should be able to get that information for search and rescue as well.
Crime Stories with Nancy Grace.
You were hearing from Justin Boardman that there is a chance to still properly process the items that have not been processed by law enforcement. I'm talking specifically about the vehicle, but what about the boots? Take a listen to our Cut 8.
And then we were since told by detectives that there was a spot of blood on the boots and they were being sent to the lab. And this was on Wednesday or Thursday. But
after that Saturday.
So the boots were found Monday. Then we were told this. Then we found out from detectives the boots had not been sent to the lab. And this was on Saturday when they came back out, that they were being held in case the cadaver dogs needed them, which cadaver dogs do not need a scent. They search for human remains. So the boots just didn't get sent in.
Okay, to John Elwood, Deputy Chief, Manatee County Search and Rescue, and you can find him at manateecountysar.org. John Elwood, what should we be doing right now?
That's a great question. And listening to Mrs. Cooley, and again, my family's prayers to you and your family, that where the pickup truck was, if they were able to obtain a scent article, something that Dylan had worn, you could use a tracking dog to see if you could determine a direction of travel. If you could at least get a direction of travel, then you might have an area of where you would be inclined to search. Somebody mentioned earlier about cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs don't work off of a scent article like tracking dogs do. Go ahead, Nancy. I'm sorry.
I believe that was Candice Cooley. Miss Cooley, are you jumping in?
Yeah, so I agree with that. We needed a scent dog. I actually breed bloodhounds for part of my living, and I called in to talk to people I knew with them to bring them in. Here is the problem now. By time we could have got dogs there, they had no interest in having the bloodhounds there. They said there was too much rain, blah, blah, blah. Now it's gone. There is absolutely no chance, after having over 300 to 400 people crawl all over that, a bloodhound is going to find Dylan's scent and follow it somewhere. It's not going to happen. Too much time has lapsed, too many people have been there, and it poured rain again yesterday.
Kurt Nurmi, you're hearing what is being said about bloodhounds and the ability to track a scent. But, as you will recall, in the Scott Peterson case, a tracker dog tracked Lacey Peterson from her home on Covina all the way to the San Francisco Bay. And it had been raining, and there had been cars over where many cars between the time Lacey was taken, her body was taken, and the time the tracker dog got going. I mean, it can be done. I don't care if it's rained. I have had accelerant dogs find accelerant underwater. Okay, so I would not rule out using a tracker dog now, Kirk Nurmi, because I've seen it done.
No, I wouldn't rule out anything at all. Going back to what was said about the pickup truck, I'd be trying to pull everything I could off that pickup truck and using the dogs as best I could because it's worth a shot. Every effort should be extended, no matter how improbable.
Yes, and speaking of the search from an unlikely source, the Diesel brothers, I'm sure you've seen them on Discovery, have joined the search for Dylan. Listen.
It's kind of with your guys' eyes in the sky, watch freshly turned up dirt. I mean, you guys know what to look for. Just any disturbance that shouldn't be there. This desert's pretty much all the same. So
yeah. So that way we'll find basically just a trailer.
A cam trailer, you'll see the pivot, his pickup. There's all kinds of equipment. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, it's all of his stuff's out there. Straight through, see that dirt pile?
Okay, yeah.
His boots were just tossed out right behind that. And there was nothing else around him, nothing.
Yeah. Were they on the far side of away from the road, so you wouldn't see them from the road? And that's all you guys have found so far?
Yeah, we have nothing else. And they, like I said, search and rescue, they were out here the first night. They got here, maybe 5? They didn't even take off and looking until probably 7:30. Yeah. Then they bailed, and then they came back maybe 6 hours that day, and then they said, we're calling it, and they all left.
Okay, let me understand something, Nate Eaton. You're hearing the Diesel brothers talking to Dylan's mom, but is that correct? After 6 hours on the scene, law enforcement just left. They didn't process the vehicle. We don't know about the boots, and they haven't called in search or cadaver dogs?
Yeah, the families continually run into these issues with law enforcement. The fact that we're talking about 2 jurisdictions here, one in Utah, one in Nevada with a border down the middle. And of course, there's jurisdictional issues over who has the rights to this and that. And from the sounds of it, Candice, it sounds like you're getting help from the Nevada side. But the Utah side, where Dylan actually lived, where this camper was, where the boots were found, where the truck was, where all of his property was, it sounds like they're just hitting wall after wall.
Correct. So Utah has told me multiple times that Nevada will do what Nevada's good. If Nevada wants to come, basically we're not reaching out to Nevada. What I since found out is I met on Friday, I sat for some Nevada detectives, the sergeant, and even the sheriff himself for almost 5 hours. and I went through the case from top to bottom. We started with everything. They have reached out to Utah multiple times. Where do you want us to deploy? Where do you want search and rescue? We're in this with you. Utah has been the one that has declined the help. Utah has not accepted and say, hey, come help us find this kid. You know, and we're talking 2 weeks now today, 2 weeks, 14 days we've been out there searching. They've had 1, 2, 3, and then four or five of those days they've had people out there searching is all.
What can you tell me, Nate Eaton, about the possibility that somebody has him and wants ransom?
Well, that was the original call the family made in order to get law enforcement involved. I believe it was Dylan's father who called the sheriff's office and said, this is according to the police too, that they got a call to go to Elko, Nevada, that someone was being held hostage. And, you know, in the beginning, there were some thoughts that there was this man that Dylan met in the middle of nowhere who asked him for a ride, who has a suspicious criminal background. There was some finger pointing that maybe this guy might know something, but Candice has actually spoken with this man. He's in custody in Utah in a facility, and they believe that he probably doesn't have anything to do with Dylan's disappearance. But fingers were pointed at him, from the beginning. Sounds like that's not so much anymore.
Okay, what can you tell me about the ransom call to Candice?
It was not a ransom call. This is what happened. One of the local citizens of Montello called me on Tuesday, the second day in the search, and said they are holding Dylan hostage and basically he might still be alive or not. And they give us a specific location. And so that is when Justin called. So I talked to this guy 3 times. So we all hauled butt into Montello, not Elko. It was in Montello. So Justin calls Utah detectives and they say, well, that's in Nevada. It's not us. You need to call Nevada. So Justin told him, if you don't get somebody out here, I'm going to take it into my own hands. So detective from Utah called Nevada. I called 911 into Elko. I tell them what's going on. So Elko sends out 6 deputies. We're furious. We're frustrated. We think our son's right down the block. These local people are telling us they got him. They chasing this other guy. They got him. They're holding him hostage. They're beating him. They're telling us all this stuff. But what Elko did not know when I called in is that my son was missing because Utah never told them.
So let me understand, Ms. Cooley, there was no ransom call.
Correct.
Then where did that even come from?
I have no clue. If you go back through all my interviews, I never said that. I said we got a call saying Dylan was being held hostage.
Right. Who told you that?
Ransom has never came out of that.
That your son is being held.
The guy's name is Kurt. Kurt calls me. Kurt did work for Dylan, so we can clarify this and people can understand that is his name. Kurt called me and said, Chase and this other guy have Dylan
Who is
in
Chase?
this house.
Who is Chase?
Chase is the guy that Dylan had picked up in the middle of the desert from Wednesday the 25th that we had as a person of interest. The one that is now in the Utah jail on unrelated charges.
Okay, got it. So Kurt tells you Chase and
this other gentleman have Dylan. They're holding him hostage in this other gentleman's house. He may or may not be alive. They're beating him. He's all over the board. But at this point, we're still looking for Chase actively, trying to find him. So I hang up the phone with Kurt. He calls me back 10 minutes later. He goes through it again. He's like, he may be at this house or he may be at this house, but we're watching this house and we know they have Dylan. We know they have Dylan. That's what I'm told. So Justin and I get on the phone with him. We get the same story. They got Dylan, they took Dylan. So that's when we hauled butt into Montello, and that's when the 911 call came in to Elko that I said, they have my son, he's being held hostage, we need somebody out there now. So when they did send, like I said, they sent 6 people. But when they got there and they went to this other person's house, Chase was nowhere around. The other person, the other gentleman, allowed them to search the vehicles, the house, the property, the sheds, absolutely everything. There was nothing. Kurt lied to us.
Why?
I don't know. That's a really good question.
Okay, stop right there. Right there. Deputy Chief, Manatee County Search and Rescue, John Elwood, right there. That's the problem. Why would you call a missing kid's mom and say, your son's being held over here when he's not? Right there. Why? That's who we need to key in on.
Sure. The question I would ask is, when Candice received this phone call, was it before the news story about her son's disappearance or after?
What about it, Candice? Before or after?
It was before.
It was before. What's your point, John Elwood?
Then that, to me, would add more credence to the claim that Dylan's being held hostage.
But am I in crazy land? Because they went to the location and he was not being held hostage there. There's no credence to the hostage situation because that's not true. Kirk Nurmi with me, high-profile lawyer Kirk, right there. The acquaintance, Kirk, who had worked for Dylan Rounds, calls in with this information. I mean, let's get real, Kirk. We've got to look at his circle of acquaintances. He's there on his farm at 6:51 a.m. That's where he calls his grandma. He's not seen or heard from since. This has got to be someone within his circle. The phone pings there. Wasn't the phone found there, Nate Eaton?
They have not found his phone or his wallet.
No phone, no wallet. Thank you for telling me that. His boots are not far away. The phone pings from there. Somebody took him from there. Dead or alive. Somebody took him from there, Kirk Nurmi. And it's got to be somebody that would be out on the farm in Box Elder.
You bet, Nancy. That's why my first stop would be the two people that work for him, as well as this Chase person is in custody. He would be being interrogated. But also now we have this tip, even though it's false, this idea that someone called in before the police reports, before it hit the media, to say that he's being held hostage. What is this person doing? What is their true motive? Are they exploring? Are they trying to find out what's going on with the investigation? So I'd be having the police look at Kurt.
What about this, Kirk Nurmi? What if cops are not doing, the deputies are not doing what they should be doing? They didn't take in the vehicle, the truck. They didn't process it. They haven't processed his camper. They couldn't find his keys, his key fob. They're not doing what you would normally expect law enforcement to do. So what do we do now? Can Candice Cooley, get in touch with the feds, or do we have to wait for authorities in Lucin, Utah to do it?
I think she can. I think programs like this help. I think getting people involved that maybe can process the truck, doing everything that they can to make up for the evidence that was lost, needs to be done. Anything possible, any law enforcement agency that can get involved with this Bureau of Land Management, Nevada authorities, what have you, jurisdiction doesn't matter. Humanity matters here, and they should be doing everything they can.
But does it actually work that way to you, Justin Boardman? Can you pick up the phone and call the FBI in as a civilian, or do we need local police to do it?
You can certainly try and attempt to do that. There's also other means to shake that law enforcement tree, if you will, in Utah, which I've done many times for others. But you can still go to the state police. You can do a lot of different things like that.
So when you say the state police, are you talking about, for instance, the Utah AG's, Attorney General?
I'm talking more about the Utah Department of Public Safety and going through them and their investigators. They don't have a lot either, but they certainly have more political clout, if you will, to pressure some things. They also have their own crime lab, people that will respond out and process. They've got all of the bells and whistles.
You know what's interesting, Candice Cooley, I want to go back to the boots. Isn't it true your son always wears the same kind of boots, the same pair of boots, and when that pair wears out, he gets another pair just like them? It's not like he's out wearing a different pair of shoes. These are his work boots that he had on that day.
Yes, and can I just touch on what you were saying about the health and public safety?
Yes.
So the commissioner actually reached out to Justin and I on Saturday to find out what the heck is going on.
And
they have reached out to us. We should know more tomorrow or today. Of course, it was on a Saturday. So, but after the coverage and seeing what's going on, he did personally reach out to us. The governor of Utah told him to.
We really need your help because nobody seemingly is helping this mother find her boy. Please do what you can to help find him. For instance, calling the Public Safety Commissioner Anderson at 801-580-5928. Repeat, 801-580-5928. Or the governor of Utah. You can call him toll free at 800-705-2464. Repeat, 800-705-2464. Let your voice be heard. Don't make Candice Cooley go through this by herself. Help her. I don't know where Dylan is, but I know this. I want action. I want to see something happening. I want that truck processed. I want scent dogs, tracker dogs out at the scene. I want his camper processed. His phone hasn't been found. Has it been pinged? Don't know. That's what we need to be doing now. Has his ATM or credit cards been used? Did somebody take his wallet for that reason? Who are his closest friends? Who works for him? Who would have been around him out in that remote area where he farms? We need help in finding this teen boy who loves the land, who was in touch with his mother, his grandparents, or his father every single day. One of them would hear from him. But the scent has gone cold. We can't find him. We don't know where he is. Nate Eden, I understand that there was a search just in the last 48 hours. Let me go to Candice Cooley on that. I know she was there working. Candice, where did you search and what, if anything, did you find?
So we focused on the Nevada side this time, and Elko County sheriffs were great. The actual sheriff was out with us, the lieutenant. They helped us organize. Everything is mapped. It was a very good search. We were looking for a particular bunker. We did find that, so that was really good. We found that. We were able to clear that. There was a couple other areas that...
A bunker? What do you mean by a bunker?
So these people out there are the anti-government prepping for the end of the world type of deal. They have bunkers. So this particular one is a Cenex, shipping container into the side of a mountain.
Okay, so you searched that area, including this bunker.
Correct.
To no avail. Guys, there is a $20,000 reward. $20,000 if you have information on Dylan Round's 19-year-old boy. We are joining his mother today, begging for your help. The tip line, 435-734-3800. Repeat, 435-734-3800. Help us bring Dylan home. Nancy Grace, Crime Story, signing off. Goodbye, friend.